Res.
So welcome everybody to CHC, got me, ADO004. This is session 2. So first of all, I'd like to do the acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Hayter Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of this nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and hope that we may move forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respects to all First Nations people and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. So let's do a bit of housekeeping. So for our new learners, we have our screens on, our monitors on and our microphones off whilst I'm presenting. We're all adult learners here, so if you need to have your screen off for anything, that's fine. Just let me know that you're still here in the chat. Break times will be at 7 and 8 p.m. We might even look to see how we're going and maybe combine that tonight and maybe have a 20-minute break together, but we'll have a consensus on that. Class participation, use your hand emoji. That's down the bottom of your screen in the react button whilst I'm presenting, and you put your hand up and ask a question. We have respectful relationships here. We're careful of our language, the words we use. We respect the opinions of others. We listen with intent. We're all learners in this together. So we're all going to be prospective workers out in the field together too in some way. So practicing our respectful language is our duty of care. Now, your duty of care out in the field is crucial that you follow those procedures because it's by law that you have to follow that. So just start practicing that now. No smoking or vaping on screen, please. Some of the content might have what we call a trigger warning. And please reach out for support if that's the case. And you can reach out to a family member or call a friend and talk through that, any concerns that you have that's come up for you. And I'll also give you the link to some other support services. We also remind everybody to make sure you look after your own health, do activities that help rejuvenate you, so you can be ready for class each week to take on some new information. These are some resources for you for if you have any concerns, anything that's worrying you, anything that comes from the content that's a concern as well. So we have 1-3 Yarn for our First Nations learners, Lifeline on 131114, and Beyond Blue on 1300 224636. You can also get an app from Beyond Blue, and it's called Beyond Now, and you can actually text and talk to somebody as well. There's the mental health line. Why we do this is about everybody learning to regulate their emotions for when you're in the industry. Now, when you're in the industry, many things will come up that might be parallel to something that you've experienced. Just remember that learning that and understanding how you work with that is crucial. Tash?
I just wanted to say that mental health line is a New South Wales number.
Okay, yep.
And you ring that line and you tell them your postcode, and they link you into your closest crisis center to where you are.
Mhm. Thank you. That's great. Good news. Good to know it works. Right. So we're looking at preparing for assessment, and it's not about the assessment that you'll do in your task work, it's about assessments and when you're working with your participants. So we're looking at the AOD assessment tools here tonight as well. And we're going to be talking about coexisting conditions and issues that can create complex cases that we work with. So they're not just coming with mental health concerns. It's also you have alcohol and other drugs on one side, but there could be other physical illnesses. There could be other environmental factors that actually affect that person's life as well. So it builds it up and makes it quite complex when you're working through the concerns for that person. We're looking at intergenerational trauma and how that is affected by alcohol and other drugs. We're working with youth and older people. So we're looking at the difference in the spasm of ages around the complex needs of both areas and the different ways that you enter working with that. And looking at preparing for assessment. What steps to prepare yourself for that? What assessment tools you will use which meet the goals of the organization and the structure of what you're working under. So also too, just think about the communication styles that many people have. Now, this gender communication styles is actually lacking the consideration that there's more than just two genders here. And we must remember in our industry and our work that there is more than two, to be very considerate of that. This is not the total of the population that you work with. So having inclusive practice in our language, I'm going to take you back here. Everyone is welcome. Think about that. Think about that in your work. That stands out here that it's not inclusive. I want to bring that to your attention because some things, forms like this, miss the mark. And why I have deliberately not changed it is so you can identify and see how different that is to what we would expect for you to be doing in the industry around inclusive practice. Mark, did you want me to go back to what we're working on tonight?
Yeah, I missed that first slide, but it's you can just tell me the unit we're on tonight.
CHCAOD004.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So think about when you're providing support, you will have many different people from different backgrounds. And it's not just about different genders and cultures. You have people from different beliefs, from different vulnerable groups in our communities. And the importance here is understanding that our communication style and strategies often can be different for different vulnerable groups here. But if we're working and thinking about inclusiveness, gender is a big one. As I said, there's 15 different genders. There's more than two genders here. There's more than just youth and older people. You've got the middle age of sectors of people. You've got young children. You've got vulnerable people with disabilities per se. So there's all these other subgroups. When you see something that's not written inclusively, think about that. Our practice here is to ensure everybody is met and respected in that space who we're working with. So, communication skills with different clients. For you to be effective, I think this part here, active listening, is one of the best skills that you can have to help somebody feel that they've been heard in that space. Mark, can I just ask for your experience in some of the work that you've done?
Yes, sorry, I was just typing to you there. I'm just thinking, I did all this in Cert 4. I got a credit transfer for this unit, but my experience in AA or experience in
In AA, please.
yeah, okay, yeah. So um,
And when we say AA, we're talking Alcoholics Anonymous.
yeah, sure. So for anyone who doesn't know, I've been in AA for 10 years. Happy to answer any questions if anyone wants to know what it's about, because they don't talk about AA much in any of the courses that I've been to in AOD or this, because it doesn't work on harm minimisation. It works on AA as an abstinence-based program, and we work on a mentorship, or it's called sponsorship. So, someone comes in, I'm sponsoring 6 guys at the moment. A guy comes in, he can't give up drinking, he's desperate, he's tried. And in my case, I tried doctor. With the doctor, I went on anti-abuse, I went on Valium, and went on naltrexone. None of that worked. So I went to psychologist, psychiatrist, counsellor. None of that worked. Went to day hab, home hab, rehab, psych ward. None of that worked. I still kept drinking. My drinking got worse and worse and worse. And found my way into AA when it couldn't get any worse. I'm in AA. Someone there put up their hand, gave me a cuddle, said it's going to be okay. He said, there's hope. There's a lot of guys here who've been through what you've been through. And they loved me back to death. They loved me back from death to recovery. And 7 years now I've haven't had a drink. And I now give back. I sponsor other guys, help guys. There's 2 guys currently that I'm dealing with, are both 2 days sober. And it's tough. It's tough for people to give up and stay sober for long periods of time. I mean, at some point they start believing in their self-will again, and they go back out there and they think they can do it all again. But
Would you say communication is one of the most important factors here
100%,
of
Helen.
that, as well
Yep.
as active listening? So
Yep.
in that listening space where you don't have to speak, how powerful have you seen that been?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, when they come in, everybody thinks that their story is different, right? But essentially, it's all the same. But you just allow these people to take the ability to be able to talk to somebody who understands you. I mean, you can talk to a doctor, a psychologist, psychiatrist, counsellor all day long, but unless they've been through what they're going through, it's really, really hard to identify with them. And, so to sit down and talk to one alcoholic and, you both go, oh, yeah, wet the bed. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, run around naked around the street. Yeah, I've done that. Stolen off your son out of your son's piggy bank. Yep, I get that. Most people would be horrified by these things, but one alcoholic talking to another, they get identification, and you can have a hug and you can have a laugh about stuff that most people would be horrified by. Yeah, and that identification is great. Yeah, sorry, Helen.
So in that too, the verbal and the non-verbal communication skills here are important too, because I would imagine in circles when you're discussing things, your non-verbals are really reaffirming for others, where you're just nodding, you're showing you're sitting openly, you're not sitting there and closing yourself off.
Oh, no.
And
Yeah.
and even that leaning in and leaning back would be another part of that communication that you would be doing.
Oh,
Do you
side by
find you do
side.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
walking with them side by side, putting an arm
Yes.
around them, being there, being a part of, you're intimately involved, if you'd like, with a person you've never met in your life before. And because you both have something in common, there's this common thread, all the barriers disappear.
Yeah.
Disappear. It's quite incredible. But the communication, their communication is the absolute essence, doing what they didn't do before, getting on the phone, talking to another man or another
Yeah.
woman. Every single morning, I take 7 calls before 8 o'clock in the morning from guys in recovery. Sometimes that blows out to 10. And we just talk, what's going on? What's the day like? What's happening? What's, anything on your mind, anything you want to talk about. And we deal with life on life's terms rather than having to go back to the solution first, which was alcohol. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. Gives us a working view of what's happening in the industry right now. Tash?
I wanted to say thank you, Mark, because I don't go to AA, but I go to GA, so Gamblers Anonymous, and it's the same thing. The active listening and the verbal and non-verbal communications, they're really the same fundamental structure. You have sponsors, and I myself have nearly reached my 90-day mark, and I speak to my sponsor once a day, and she knows when something's not right with me. She can tell in the tone of my voice now. And those are the non-verbal communication skills that you can relate once you're in the industry, because gambling, alcohol, narcotics, they all sort of interlink. An alcoholic can be a gambler as well, or
Yeah.
vice versa.
That's you're so right. And do you know what? Addiction is so bloody predictable. This is the ridiculous part about it. The actions of all of us, whether it's GA, AA, NA, SLA, which is SLA, OEA, Overeaters Anonymous, you name it, GA, the addiction is the same. And
Yeah,
it's
it is.
really predictable behavior. When you get to know somebody, you can see the change instantly. I've got a guy I'm working with at the moment. He's 6 months. In the last 2 days, I've seen a change in him. I know he's going to drink again. It's inevitable because it's predictable.
Yeah, I'm day 82 today.
Yeah.
Well done.
Sorry, I've jumped ahead here.
Okay.
Well done. I hope you got your chip. I hope you got your 60-day chip. And
Yeah, I did.
or do they give out chips in GA? Because I thought they would be a little bit like a gambling chip.
They're
All right.
coin. They're
Let's-
coin.
Let's get back to communications.
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry.
We were
So-
communicating.
As you can see, building a rapport is quite important here, and establishing positive relationships with clients. So what you've just heard is around establishing those positive relationships that build support. You're also employing different conflict management styles, techniques along the way, because you will be, if you're a support person or a peer worker in those sectors, often conflict will arise around the conflict for the person with the challenge of the addiction as well, and either butting up against support and what's driving that addiction, as well as their environment. And you being able to have conflict skills, good communication here is another crucial part of those conflict skills. So using it's more around negotiation. So even though it could feel a conflict coming against somebody going against what you're working with, it then becomes a negotiation. And your techniques in that will assist your participant with their needs and help them get back on track and move towards their goals. But it's certainly, from what we've heard from Mark and Tash around that, discussing openly fears, hurts, things like that for the participant. Having good communication. How would you use this when you're working with different types of people? So think about the way you approach things, being open, empathetic, person-centered, self-determination. These skills help your communication skills. It's about being open, being present in the space. And there's one thing I'll always come back to around communication. There's always a lot of words do not have to be because sometimes people don't want to just speak. They just want to be in the space. So when you do what we call hold the space, that is being a space where you and that person is sitting together. It's a safe space. The one thing you can say is, I hear you. You don't have all the answers. None of us ever will. But to try and have empathy and open understanding from maybe from your own personal experience, maybe from your knowledge, but every individual has an individual experience. For you to connect with them, saying, I hear you, says, I validate what you're saying. I validate and I hear you. We don't have an answer for everything. But communication, connectiveness, inclusiveness, all matter. So there's, excuse me. So think about how would you tailor your communication style and your skills to work with different situations. And I want you to think about, we're going to go out into breakout rooms, and I just want you to think about 4 different areas. Well, let's break it right back down to 2. How would you work with somebody who was non-compliant? They were court mandated to attend an alcohol and other drug support group. So they're reluctant and they must be there. They've got probably 10 weeks court ordered to attend a group. The other group could be around how would you change your communication style for people who have, and this will be tricky, a speech language difficulty. So you're going to have people here who are hearing impaired. They might not be able to speak. You might have people who have just hard of hearing, so they do have language, but they still need that processing time to hear. They might wear hearing aids, might have cochlear implants. Some people carry speaker boxes. So a speaker box is like listening to whatever's spoken to them in a little microphone, and it just makes it louder, and they wear earphones. And when that speech comes through, it's like having a little stereo. So there's all different things, but how are you going to work with that? How are you going to communicate? How are you going to change your style? So two very distinct different areas here. So let me just stop share. I'm going to pause.
I'll listen to you guys. Thank you.
I'll present what you've spoken about, Sagar, too, okay?
Sure. I'll listen. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Just waiting for the others to come back.
I was
Well,
saying to
well,
Tash, Helen, that it was a long 8 minutes you gave us.
Yes, it was.
You normally cut it short by a couple of minutes. It's funny how you know each other's habits, hey? It's like, and then because I was saying to Tash, we've got to get onto the hearing because we're not going to have much time.
We actually started to break that down, and it was actually, we did need longer time.
Yeah.
I worked with Sagar whilst you were in the room, so it was like, yeah, so it ended up probably being good that you did have extra time. All right, so
It's
the
Mark.
question
We couldn't
Um,
hit Mark on our ends of the screen. It is like froze.
all right, so in response to the communication styles, the two different ways of working with two different styles of clients, Sagar and I discussed about, for both, it's about giving time and giving space
Mm.
and helping somebody understand the possibilities that are there that you can work towards. It's about stepping slowly, understanding that it's not easy, and you reassure them, you advocate for them. And one important thing Sagar did bring up around was don't overpower them.
Mm.
I thought that was very true around how our role could take over something that like that. There's just too many things to do at once, so process slowly, language and like having captions on, that also can assist. I think my internet connection is a little bit low as well. There we go. We're off again. We talked about having a voice technology. We also talked about the written word being and having to be very flexible and take more time, because it will take more time to communicate. Oh, and what I'm thinking of is patience. All right, room 1, Tash and Trudy.
Do you want me to speak, Tash?
yeah, go for it. You're writing the notes, so
Okay. We both talked about with the non-compliance court mandated participant was just hold space. And if they've got their support worker to come through, kind of like go through the support worker first. No pressure. Do a lot of active listening and empathy. And use your intuition, because if they're court mandated, they can say that they can do whatever, and still be doing stuff on the, and also set your boundaries, firm boundaries as well, but also be empathetic and towards and maybe you just lay the consequences down, as well in that firm, assertive way, empathetic way. Well, if you don't do this will happen then and now. And basically you negotiate. If I've done this before, as or not, non-compliance and that, just give me 10 minutes. That's all you got to give, and then we'll do that. I think, and using probably a lot of non-verbal, and also probably finding common ground, so they do crack that.
Yes.
If they like the Crows or the football or whatever, just do a little bit of probing.
Find that connection link. Find that what we call currency.
That's it.
Find the currency. Yeah.
That's what, like, I do that quite often, is find their currency.
Yeah.
With the person who's got a hearing disability, maybe slow your speech down a lot without being patronizing. Do a lot of non-verbals, like thumbs up, thumbs down, and devices as well. If they've got, like that speak box, or even on your iMessages, on notes, you can, and then they can. And if they've got a support worker or an advocate there, go through them, go through the advocate or support worker, but don't exclude or talk over.
Oh.
And I think we've all got a habit of, I think everyone's got a habit of doing that. I don't care who you are. I think sometimes we all do it. So, and that's in the industry.
Don't exclude.
Yeah. And was that about it, Tash?
Yeah, that's about it, really.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done, both of you. Good work. All right. Ian and Elizabeth.
Well, so we speak about with the non-verbal or non-verbal speaker. So we were like speaking clearly. So writing things down. Be when you clear speaking. So use the sign language, or use the language that is simple sentence, but don't give them make things short and clear to understand. For the non-compliant, sometimes it's just understand them why they're non-compliant, and also work with them at the same time to meet them halfway. Give the opportunity, like, is there something that is making them non-compliant, and how can you best work together to be compliant, or to make things work in better of the services that you're providing and the services that they're getting. Yeah.
Excellent.
Elizabeth,
love that you give opportunities.
Yeah, we also speak about the speechless language difficulty is just to give them time and don't overpower them, like talking over them. And also, if it's easier to write things down, it's just left for you to communicate with the person. How would you like me to communicate with it? Would you prefer me writing it down, or how would you like it? And I also made an example of a client of mine. He put everything in writing. He can't speak, but he'll put it in writing for us to understand what he's talking about. Yeah.
We also had the client that was that communicate through visual stuff. So having pictures and things like that to, like, okay, it's toilet, just bring out the picture and they'll
Yep. So vision cards.
Yeah, it's a vision board where you plan your day with the vision board and give it to them. Ask them what the day is gonna be like today, and they can just pick the pictures and put on the board. Yeah.
This is awesome information. Thank you for sharing because it's crucial for that communication. And you've just given some great strategies here that will certainly support somebody with hearing and speech language difficulties. And you're doing this in the industry now. So amazing work. Thank you. Mark and Peru.
Do you want me to talk, Peru?
Yes, Mark.
Okay, so look, everyone's covered a fair bit of it, but communication problems. And sorry, I don't want to be here today. Someone coming in and saying that. Well, we've got to active listen and turn it back on them. What are your options? You know, how do you see this going? We can sit here and we can count the cobwebs around the place, or we can utilize this time. You know, I get paid to sit here regardless of what you do, you know, so, you know, I get paid to listen. So if you want to use that time, just start talking. So throw it back on them, ask lots of questions and see if you can get some sort of common ground, as somebody else said, to be able to open them up a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, so active listening, lots of questions, try reversing their negativity and turning it into a positive. In respect of the communications issues, most of that will again find common ground. There's apps on the phone, visual aids, whiteboard pictures, sign language interpreters, a microphone if they can't hear you, writing pad. Yeah, there's so many ways. I mean, communication and what we talked about there with Peru's English isn't brilliant. Well, I thought it was pretty good, but she talks about we talked about how do other people handle that, and what sort of help does she get out there for when she needs to talk. And Peru covered off a few things. Sorry, Peru, I've jumped in there.
Thank you. And working from experience, but also too, I liked what you said around reversing negativity into positives. Finding that common ground. Lots of tools there that you would use for speech language, hearing support as well. Thank you. Good work. Adam and Alex.
Yeah. So yeah, like there's a lot of good things have been said, but yeah, with that first question, we talked a little bit about motivational interviewing, like communicating, like to understand, you know, like listening, you know, sort of getting the client to reflect back a little bit and see if it might, you know, spark a little bit of something in them, and you know, maybe just but yeah, we also spoke a little bit about just trying to raise some awareness, because if they're there court ordered, you know, or court mandated, in the stages of change model, they're probably only going to be in that pre-contemplation, you know. So like a little bit was
Very
just
good.
like raising awareness, and you know, like Adam said, you know, like a good question would be like, how, out of from scale of like 1 to 10, you know, how much do you want to like stop drinking? And they might say like a 2 or a 3, and then you know the question after would be why not a 1? You know, so it gets them sort of, you know, thinking, oh, actually there's a little bit of a reason. Just some things like that, and then just like remaining empathetic and non-judgmental. Like you don't want to be like attacking these people, like bombarding them with too much if they're not overly keen on being there already.
Excellent.
And then yeah,
Thank you.
with the second question, you know, like the client they might have difficulties with communication. No, it could be multiple things, you know, like there's a lot of, it's not like just one example, you know, there's a lot of things. So just a pretty broad stroke there. We said just doing what's best for the client, you know, like they're stepping into our service, which can already be pretty daunting. So just doing what works best for them and just asking some simple questions at the start, like how would you like us to communicate with you? Does this work okay for yourself?
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really like that. And has come up nearly with every group about asking how you would like me to communicate with you. Raising awareness. Love that you brought up the pre-contemplation stage, Alex, with you and Adam. I know motivational interviewing, great tool to use. And you brought up about being non-judgmental. And I know I've probably spelt it wrong in the chat there. But that is crucial because somebody else in that stage, when they've been mandated, they actually feel the injustice, judged, the stigma that goes with all this. So for you to work with openness, being non-judgmental, being empathetic, holding the space, giving them time, these are all amazing skills. Thank you, everybody, for great work. And we've just shared a lot of skills with a lot of our other learners who are online. Right. So we'll go to a break. And I'll just pause this. Puppy's gone to sleep, Mark. Good night, Tash.
Thanks, everyone. Sorry.
You take care.
Bye.
All right. Is Ian back yet?
I'm here.
Okay, Ian, would you be able to explain a little more about how your client used to communicate her emotions through her muscles?
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean muscle. Her music. Sorry.
Oh, music. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sorry with music. Okay.
All right. So she was looking at the
But
words
normally
in
she would
music.
write, like, she write her own music, and then that's how he would, like, he doesn't socialize, or like, I don't know, like, she write her own music, produce it, and then that's the way she express her or her emotions, what she's going through, and all that stuff. I think she had an he or she, he has an amputations when he was stabbed by one of his uncles, and
Oh,
it wasn't happen. But he's scared of females and male, especially
right.
why they care. So what he does
Mm.
is just if he see you muscly, he will not be like. So he would
Right.
write his own music, and that's how the way. So if he send it to you, it's like, oh, okay. He's like, especially with his psychiatrist and all that stuff, he would just write music, send it to them, and then they just listen and they're like, oh, okay. That's how he express his emotions.
That's amazing. That's very, very very ingenious, isn't it? And very creative. Thanks for sharing that. All right, I'll just go back to share my screen. All right. All right, now let's have a look at the AOD assessment tools. So just as an example, we have 3 here. We have the Victorian AOD Comprehensive Assessment, and that is about assessing somebody for a wide range of substances. And the audit, which is an alcohol use disorders identification test. And there's 10 questions. And this is a shorter one, a version to do with somebody that you're working with as well. And it looks for the environmental factors here around the impacts of what can affect them. And it's a clinician guide that's available to all people working with in the AOD industry. And then you have craft, and that's for young adults aged 12 to 21. And it's rather brief too. And it's you can actually do a self assessment with this tool as well. And I know Beyond Blue have some self-assessments as well. So they're looking at, there's many other free AOD needs assessment tools here too. So they're specific to certain age groups as well, different types of substances. And then it can also help you as the worker to determine a client's current patterns of use and how strongly are they dependent on that, and how strongly they're dependent on behaviours of that abuse, substance abuse. So the standardised assessment tools are readily across Australia, and you can get these from the government health websites. And the benefits of using a standardized assessment tool is that they use questions that have been evaluated as being reliable and valid for gathering data. So they aim to provide support to develop a hypothesis and a overview of during the course of an informal assessment. It highlights issues that may not have appeared before and during an informal assessment. So you're looking and filling in the gaps here with these tools as well. They also provide an objective measurement of the client's whole circumstances. So remember, we also environmental effects here as well. And it can look at doing an objective measure on how changes happened and what the success of treatment has been, and how they're working towards and making changes and reaching goals. And it provides the means to develop a database that allows for research, especially comparability between different treatment approaches here. So if somebody's assessing services to see what approach works better, this is where researchers come in, and the purpose of that research can certainly enhance the skills of the worker because you're using the most reliable type of assessment tool here as well. So depending on the tools available in different situations as well, and it depends on what clients present when they come into the workplace, into the organisation. But there might be organisations might have one tool that they use all the time. And one tool might be used for various components, and that can be selected depending on what the participant presents with. And you have to think about the nature of the substance abuse and the type of counselling necessary for that as well. So all of that will have an effect on the meeting the needs of the participant. All right. So we're going to do a little bit of research, and we're going to research the 3 different tools that we actually mentioned here. I'll just bring them back up. So we have the Victorian AOD Comprehensive Assessment, we have the audit, and we have the craft. So I would like you in groups to go and research what they are, what they present, how do you use this tool, what type of addiction is it more preference to? Is it across a wide range? Is it more geared to certain areas of the counselling service here, doing the assessment? Think about where you would use this tool as well. Think about the age group as well. So I'm just going to press pause here on record for the activity. Tricky. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. How do we go? All right, so let's have a look. Let's hear from Ian and Trudy. You were working on the craft assessment. Ian and Trudy. Hello. No? All right, let's have a look at, there you are. Right, so Trudy, Ian. Oh, she's gone. She went flying. Okay, let's go to room 2 and just see how we go there. So, Mark and Peru, how did you go?
We went well. So we're looking at the audit, and I actually just had to drive. My apologies. I had to drive down the shops to get reception. I just missed that first question. So we were looking into the audit system, were we?
Yes, yes. So you're looking at the audit, what it does, who is it specifically for?
Yep.
And what type of assessment is it?
Yep.
And
so this
where,
sort of, sorry.
You're right, you go.
So this sort of assessment measures one's capability of how much harm they're doing to themselves or others by seeing the intake of alcohol. So yes, and so it's like a screening sort of thing, and where we get a base from, and so we can move on from there.
Yeah.
Sort of
So
thing, yeah.
it's like a platform to see where they're at
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then we
upon
can move
entry?
forward from there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Similar to a basis 32 or something like that. Yeah.
And did you think it was the questions, were they easy things to ask?
Yes, I thought they were pretty straightforward. I think you've got to be straightforward. Asking these questions, open and honest conversation. Yep, I think that's the way to go. You've just got
Yeah,
to go out
yeah,
there and ask them. Yeah,
yeah. Thank you.
no
Good
problem.
work.
Thank you.
All right. So let's try Trudy. Where have I got
Yes,
to this time?
yes.
You flew out the room and flew back.
Oh, it was awful. um, with Ian, and we decided it was a well validated screening tool to use with adolescents from 12 to 21.
Right.
And they've actually gone up in versions of 2.1, which includes vaping and edibles of marijuana. And
Okay.
the questions were orally asked as well. And it went on a scoring system, I think. Am I right there?
Yeah, it's they'll ask instead, like it's kind of like repeated. It's more in a better version rather than before was this short kind of like they would ask if you smoke or this smoke marijuana, but now it's more open, more inclusive, more of like they have more substance listed, and you would have to tick how often you use it, and how many time basically. But before was if it's a yes or a no, but now it's like yes, I use it this many time, and then you write down.
And it's
Yeah.
actually
Okay.
used to prevent full-blown addiction because
Yeah,
of the age as well. Yeah.
they track it
Wow.
over 12-month period, and then it's gone up from before it used to be a 62 and has gone up to 72.
And this is version 2.1 now, is that right?
Yeah.
So it's great to see that they're updating and going with what's happening now
Yes.
in the community as well, because some of the tools stay broadly generic. But
Yeah.
that, because it's so specific, I would imagine needs to be updated constantly.
Yeah, because they've actually included the vaping of marijuana and edibles of marijuana instead
Yeah.
of just
There's
smoking of
another,
marijuana.
there's
Mm.
another, there's dopey, there's wax, and there's oil, like more
Uh,
of things that are used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh. That just opens up what's going on in society, doesn't it?
yeah.
Thank you.
And they
A
have
re-
like, sorry, they have like self questionnaires, and they have like approximately.
Yeah.
Okay. So that'd give a real wide range.
Yeah. So one you can use the paper base, and the
Yeah.
other one you can use the tablet or computer system base.
Yeah.
So meeting the needs of the young people again
Yeah.
around technology, how they communicate, that's important.
And how they use these particular drugs now. So
Mm.
it's all quite a bit scary.
Great
There's
information.
another
Thanks for reading that.
clinical one too. So
Sorry.
there's a
Sorry, Agnes.
clinical, there's like a self-base, there is questionnaires, there's clinical interviews. So it's like they're upgrading every now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Wow. Keep that connection with that tool as well. That information will be good for your assessments. All right. Alex and Elizabeth.
Yeah, so we had the Victorian intake assessment tool, and this one was like, it was very, very comprehensive. Like there was like a lot to this one. Like it was split up into a few sections. So you had like your demographic information, and then section one was about your AOD use. Section two was risk and complexity, and then there was a summary and an outcome of the intake. Like in the section one, it goes over like current usage, previous usage, history, harms, when, how, what drugs were used, the amounts, evidence of harms, legal, physical, financial, mental, previous services used. Like there was a whole lot to that. And then in like the section two, it was risk and complexity, and it covers like a few of the, I guess, us like additional things that might come along with usage, like it, it screens for your homelessness risk, violence risk, family, legal issues, self-harm and suicidal concerns, physical and mental health issues, and it even mentions a little bit about any gambling concerns. Like it's a really good form because it sort of goes into quite a lot. Like I could see how you could take like an hour to like complete this form properly with a client in some situations, and it was good in the way that it means, I think the way that it's like this, so it means that you don't have to keep retelling your story. You just do it once for an intake or assessment, and then you're good to go. They can get passed through to other services. And there was also a little bit at the end that talks about like the outcome of the intake. Do you need any more services to be referred on to, and a bit of a summary. So I thought that was really good. But I guess some of the negatives to the form is there is a lot of content in it, and like AOD clients and stuff, some of them might not be, like they might get triggered at little bits and pieces, or they might lose patience or whatnot. So yeah, it definitely has its pros and cons.
Wow, you certainly, both of you, done some great work there. Thank you. Because what you identified, I really like about you don't have to keep telling your story around that triggering. And you are correct around that comprehensive information builds up an amazing story and background, and for that information to be there and not have to keep going back over. The one thing here is, though, you need a few breaks when you're doing this.
Yeah, definitely.
Certainly. And as you pointed out, great be able to have those resources in place, connections to those things, but the comprehensive work that's so complex in memory redraw for that person as well can be tiring. So if you're ever using this tool, think about breaking it down into 3 sections, and build that up a bit like you do a recovery plan, in that you add to it as you go. You might have to break that down into 3 sessions, and then bring all that information together, depending on how the participant is, really. If they're open and receptive and be able to stay with doing that, because it's quite intense.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
otherwise, yeah. How would, if you were working in the field, Alex, how would you see yourself using this tool with someone?
Um, I would just I'd probably let them know. This is a tool that we use. You can participate as much as you like. The more information that you're happy to give me, I feel like the better that we can help you in the long run. But if there's any bits that are too triggering or you don't feel like answering, that's okay. you need to have a break, or if you want to do it in parts, like you suggested, like that would be okay as well. Just sort of letting them know that, like, you know that it is a bit, but yeah, and I guess I'd also use it for maybe like first time clients, so you might not have any information at all on, like, if you have a client who might have done like a detox and a rehab, and then now they're at your whatever service, like, you might be able to pre-fill out a little bit of the form from some previous things maybe, but then
Yeah.
also you'd want to hear like an updated version from them as well.
With a participant can often be, there can be a delay in time. So wanting the most update information is important there. Good pickup, Alex. Very well done. Thank you. Let me just go back to share my screen. So once again, thinking about looking at these three screens, determining the current pattern of use, the severity, the dependence, they're all specific to that participant. And knowing that these tools are validated and recommended in the industry as well. All right, let's have a look at intergenerational trauma. Now, it's important to understand that intergenerational trauma and how it affects Indigenous Australians. So with First Nations people, that trauma is an overwhelming response to a major catastrophic event that happened that the person cannot cope with, and it's often passed down to subsequent generations, and due to loss of culture, colonization, and forced removal of children. So the effects on First Nations peoples around that self-destructive behaviour. There's lifestyle diseases that have come with that, entry into the criminal system as well, mental health problems, addiction, and domestic violence. And also First Nations people may be reluctant as a participant to trust. And it's really difficult when it's legally mandated that they must attend. So that fear, the stigma, and the non-compliance has another complex trauma leading and powering that refusal behavior and that self-destructive behavior behind the scenes. So one thing to remember, of course, when we're working with First Nations peoples, having that cultural awareness. So let's have a look at coexisting conditions and issues. Now, common coexisting conditions and issues associated with people who are assessed for drug and alcohol issues can often include around the physicality of that person. So weight, lack of appetite. It could be around slurred speech, the sensory parts there, the cravings they have, the withdrawals symptoms, the agitated by light and noise. Even in a car with the light flashing through trees, it actually can trigger the brain responses, and it can actually make people feel dizzy and quite agitated as well. The intellectual effects as well around poor judgment, memory loss is a very big one. The emotional changes that are happening all the time for that person, the loss that they felt from losing relationships, from losing their cognitive ability. It starts to go layered up then with grief and loss around that as well. And the psychiatric side of the comorbidities of anxiety and paranoia that can go along with the alcohol and other drugs abuse. So these are very complex areas that you're working. You as a support worker understanding what they are, knowing that these people would also be then helped with a psychiatrist or a psychologist here as well. For you to understand what those behaviors are, that's the work on the ground. That's the real work interaction area that needs that understanding, patience, giving time, giving space, reassurance. When working with young people. So from the early middle childhood stage, some of those developmental stages can also be impaired by young people's parents who may or may not be involved in the youth's treatment for drug and alcohol addiction, and they may be using themselves. Because generally parental involvement assists in the recovery process for implementing strategies that can be supported at home. So that safe structure there for them, that safe environment to be able to do that in is crucial. If they're not having that, makes it rather hard that their environment is unstable, and often then live-in support might be more beneficial for some young people, but there's not a lot of services doing that. For young people, however, who have parents who are substance users and not creating that supportive family relationships there to assist in recovery, to assist to guide, becomes a rotating cycle of cycling in and out of usage, often wanting to get away from the cycle that's in the home and then often going back to it because of the frustration of not being able to get out of that cycle. To learn behavior too, as well, think about the environment they're growing up in. Very hard to fight against what you live in. So parental involvement here and building support structures can be done during the assessment stage here. And any type of parental support and family involvement all works towards the young person's recovery. It's a crucial stage. It's about connectiveness and creating a safe environment. Hopefully, having a safe parental involvement and their environment is crucial, and that they're flexible in supporting them. This is where a lot of young people come crashing down because they haven't got the system in place, that network, that safe space to do recovery in. This is why the work that's done in our communities around youth space for alcohol and other drug addictions and services is crucial in helping them move forward, because the change is not going to happen in the home. They mightn't be living at home as well. Often young people could be living on the street or in group homes. So that environment there is not as supportive that you would hope it to be. So the services that link in for the young people will then become crucial safe spaces to learn about recovery. And it can be a very long, slow process. Ian?
I was gonna say, especially working with, I worked in the youth industry, and some of these services are not really the most tailored, supported kind of services. So you will find a young person has been moved from family because their family were using drugs and instability of safety nets. And when they're in a residential of youth group or youth services, you'll find them they don't act, you'll find them that you're being placed with somebody that is at risk or that's already in the place of you're not protected in that way. So you're moving from a situation into another situation. And people are really, rather than just looking at somebody that actually you need to support and they need to feel safe, they're putting them at risk at the same time. I don't know if anybody has worked with youth services, but you'll find that a lot. Like, especially there will be like, oh, we're trying to meet the need of the young people, but in reality, it's not the case. I don't know.
Well, trying to meet the need, but what can their service supply too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm coming to this. I was working with one of the young person that were moved from the parents because the parents were not stable. But sorry, it's a trigger warning. He recently passed. He had a car accident, but one of the situation was which pushed him away from the place that he once called a home was that they start restricting him on milk, and which led him to become a which from milk he start taking alcohol instead of milk. So which one would you prefer, just him having milk or him having alcohol to survive? So it just pushed him to that extent that he start stealing cars, and from there he went downhill and then it just crashed. So these are the things like some services are really not looking after the young people as they're supposed to, or as they said these are the services that they're offering. They're really not actually offering certain services, and you'll be shocked to see in places. I don't know, but yeah.
Thank you for your honesty too, and your reflection on what you know working in the services right now. It's a struggle right across the board, and the gaps in service are evident for some young people, especially. And that's quite hard to hear that support is not there. But services would be also struggling under the weight of how many people need support as well as having the workers, trained workers doing that work out there too. That would put a pressure on an organisation as well. And then funding, what type of services that can be employed in those areas as well. I suppose too, when you think about it, the frustration for the worker and that all that work that's going on, sometimes it just doesn't meet the needs of the person, does it, Ian? And that's a hard reality for us in the sector.
Especially
we can do what we can do.
Yeah, especially in the youth justice, there's a lot of struggle. But
Yeah.
I think me being in the industry, or me being as once were, I think some services should just like, rather than just, there's something called, if you can't do it, accept the fact that you can't do it and
Yeah.
let other people do it. But if you're taking on board for the sake of, oh, this industry has, or this is no bullshitting, but this is where some industry are very greedy and financially entitled to. But I feel like some places should just like, okay, we're not able to support this number of people in our care. We don't have the workers. We don't have this the the services that we best could offer. Other organizations should take over, but the like that entitlement of like, okay, if I have this X amount of young people that are doing well or in my care, you know, like I don't know, but it's just more of like the financial stability of
Yeah.
some places.
Thank you for your insights, Anne. Let's go to the other spectrum end of some of the life stages here. And we're only looking at the 2 life stages tonight. But for the older people in our communities, often you might need to use different assessment tools here. And the consideration of existing conditions because of their the life stage, they would have experienced more things. They might have picked up comorbidities. So a lot of older people still might be living with other illnesses as well as drug and alcohol abuse. They could be interacting that with medications as well that they're using for other illnesses or and the addiction to prescription medications as well over a long period of time. All that builds up another layer of and exacerbates conditions that they're living with. But it's with our work, it's about awareness of those issues and understanding the complexities here, very different to a younger person's stages of change. And what do you need to consider in the type of tool that you would be assessing them with due to these coexisting needs, the different attitudes and beliefs as well at this stage as well. But often it's the interaction with other medications that people are on who have been on that for a long period of time. So just say even with diabetes, liver disease, different type of cancers they might have experienced over a period of long period of time become another complex layering up of what you're still working with along the AOD. A lot to consider here. So when you're preparing for assessment of someone that you're working with, the main goal here is to have a purpose. What is all this for? And that discussion with the participant and the relevant health professionals that could be doing the work along with you, or if you could be a peer worker in the sector, discussing the physical, emotional, financial, legal, and psychosocial state of where that person is. So that psychosocial is social and emotional and physical welfare around mental health. But all those things impact on that. So their emotional health and well-being, if they're having financial difficulties, there's another layer of complexity. If they're having legal issues, so they might have been charged for using drugs. So there's another layer of complexity causing stress, which might make the usage again and reaching out for self-soothing tactics that they've known how to use often the effects of people who are in families who are also drug and alcohol users can often push people back into a cycle of use of known behavior because it's what's done in a family. Often when you're working with a participant, you'll be consulting with their professional as well as you need their GP. You could be working with grief counselors here as well. Because just remember with alcohol and other drugs, many people have gone to them because of grief and loss in their lives. And that has never been addressed enough for them to be able to move from that usage. So there's another complexity here, another underlying trauma. For the participants' wellness, you could even be working with nutritionists. And the biggest picture here, when we go back to the purpose here, why are they seeking help? And is it just about, I have to, I need to, I want to change something? Or are they looking at the big picture, or is it small? So here they could be in the pre-contemplating stage before they're even getting into going anywhere near maintenance. So that wavering in and out, they might have a small idea about a purpose, but the bigger purpose might be where you can work with somebody to help them identify that. That takes time because that's deep questioning here. Those open and probing questions that help find more information along with your assessment tools. It's about that conversation that you have that can draw out rich information. Are people, one of the biggest things I think is determining that readiness for change. And even though they could be wavering, your support could help them take it further if they're still unsure. If they can understand that there's a safe space to be, yes, it's going to be hard work, but we'll be here with you. That is reassuring. The fear of being isolated on your own doing this work, it's hard. It's very hard to know that you can reach out to someone during that journey is important. So that will help determine somebody's readiness for change. When people are affected by, as I said before, around that financial, legal, emotional stress, how is that going to impact on the work that you're going to do with that person and helping them move forward? And what is the level of risk here of working with that person? So think about them coming into a service. Are they known? Could they be caught up quite legally in the drug system? And they could be followed by somebody after them for money, per se, vengeance. There's levels of risks here of working in the industry as well. A lot of organisations have safety and risk assessments in practice and protocols for each service here. That's to keep the workers safe and to keep the participants safe. Yeah. So Mark has talked about a harm minimization tactic. How would somebody see that being evolved? Mark, would you like to talk to that?
So I was just thinking, so that the pre-contemplation stage, if you could just reduce the harm to them, so they don't do anything too crazy. It would just buy time, just buy them a bit of time to have a think about them and their actions. Is where I was sort of
Yep.
going with that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, focusing on the strategies to reduce the harm, and because there's already risks associated with alcohol and other drugs. So depending on where they are in the community with that as well, those risks could be high or low, depending on who they're hanging out with as well, what they're involved in. And what sort of strategies have they got in place to reduce their harm to themselves or to others? What's something that you could see helping reduce harm in the service sector, in a service that you could be working in? So, you know how you would have, often you will have an incident register in an organisation. So those incidences that happen in a centre are registered and often evaluated, because the processes here of how you work with that, if that happens, are put in place into the organisation. Because a lot of the services often work after midnight. So what are the safety practices here? And often it'll be closed door, might be how to gain access safely. There'll be processes there to keep the workers safe, as well as the participants coming in for support. Ian?
I work for an organization, and they used to have they had a spreadsheet. So one of our young persons started having late night, and these late night were not family oriented, so they were someone who was using her for drugs, so she was sexually exchanging her for drugs access and stuff like that. So we had like spreadsheets of the drivers that were dropping her and all that. So to like, it used to be a sleep shift that they used that tracking the incidents that have occurred of how she's being dropped off late. We don't know who's bringing her and who's that. So it was like a constant for 2 months, so which helped them to turn and sleep over into an active. So it's like, and two staff on at the same time, because some of these people would try to force themselves into their houses to so it would, yeah. So I guess like some incidences, when they do have them, it help them track the outcome of better resource.
Yes, thank you. Good comments here, because those incidences then help bring in new risk managements, and it's another layering up. It's another process here. Problem identification. How are you going to then work with that and strategize around that as well? Another risk of harm here. What's the preventive behaviors and practices we need to put into place here? How are we going to give that information out to everybody in our service as well? All these are factors that layer up that information process. So this is why communication here is crucial, because if you can ensure the, how can I put it, reducing the consumption of alcohol and reducing the misuse of drugs, it's certainly going to slow down those processes around intoxication when they become at risk, harm to themselves, harm to others. And those strategies that are put in place in an organisation to reduce that are crucial in the practices then that you work with that person and teach them around safety behaviours. Because think about when something happens in somebody's life too, they react. So what are they going to react to if they haven't learnt new strategies here as well? And that comes back to determining readiness as well. If you're preparing for assessment here, think about the perimeters of confidentiality here that you're going to need. How are you going to let them know about the processes here, the purpose of what you're doing, and gaining their understanding of what the process is of an assessment, and ensuring that they have got the right information and you gaining consent as well. Excuse me. So often, to start with, looking at a participant's history of drug use, there are stages that you will go through and discuss with them, and where they are with these. You've got your basic information that you'll be taking from them, especially discussing mental health issues for them. And have they got the ability to be able to start this now? Are they ready? How are they preparing themselves? What support systems are around them? What's their legal history here? And socially, where have they been in society for this addiction to have happened? What types of drugs have they used? Where have they been? What other different things that they've gone through, stages of that use? All relevant information to be documented. This is a crucial part here of your work in those early stages. Because to identify any of these, also to have an understanding of what they and how they are used in somebody's life. So when you think about these stages here, the history, what's their current status with drug and alcohol use? How are they using this in their everyday life or not? Or what's their history of doing that? And this often also helps build up an environmental picture of where they've been. It's also important for you to have this information for your task work here. What each type of alcohol and drug is, how they are actually ingested in some way, used, and what are the long-term effects of that. That is in your learner guide as well, and it's also well worth doing research on. For working in the industry, often people will come to a support service when they're in the stages of withdrawal. And often the behaviours they may display can put them at risk of harm and put others at risk, especially the workers. And you would be looking for these signs and behaviours coming from the stages of withdrawal as to identify where that person is, what sort of support that person needs at that time. So the different withdrawal signs certainly have the auditory and visual and tactile identification here. Often people visually, nausea, vomiting, shakes. Some people talk and babble around, and they're in hallucinating states, agitated. Often people are very unstable, walking, movements, have difficulty sleeping. People have weight loss. It's all different phases that people go through under every different type of substance or alcohol here. And these symptoms can last for a few weeks, for years. And that will then also go back to understanding that history of drug use. So those behaviors can give you an understanding that there is a history there. So you can come back and get some more relevant information here. That's a physical sign that you're seeing, that you know that there has been long-term use. Lots of health issues for people with drug use. And that identification certainly needs medical intervention. The safety around working with people who have blood-borne diseases as well. Remember your safety around working with people who have hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HIV, tetanus, skin infections, things like that. So often before you, if you're working in a drug and alcohol service, you would have to make sure that you've had your Hep B and C, Hep A, B and C updates, injections. Often you're not allowed to work unless you've had these vaccinations. And there's a series of vaccinations that you need. I do know with when we were coming out of social work at university, in our first placements, we were at a drug and alcohol support service, and we were not allowed in unless we had proof of those vaccinations. So it can often be a requirement in the industry. So another thing to think about around for your safety as well. It's not everyone's belief to do that, but a lot of organisations will require that as part of the duty of care around care for people's health, the workers' health. So what's happening with the current trends around drug types and usage? Overall, society has started to increase its usage of crystal meth. And a lot of young people are choosing not to drink alcohol, but use other illicit drugs. And it's interesting that often surveys have come out with around saying, they're talking about the decline use of heroin, but the high support use of cannabis and methamphetamines. And that changes and goes in cycles. And it's not just all about young adults using drugs. It's ages right across the spectrum here.
I think since sorry.
Sorry, Ian?
I think since COVID, you would see a lot of increase in term of like mental health and depression is mostly like since the COVID situation is like it made people very lonely. It isolates you, and then you just got into the point whereby you get addicted to something that if you were social outing and stuff like that, you will not be relying on them. And I felt like even myself sometimes like being able to I just moved state, so it feel like I'm alone. And if I could find something that I'm coping on, then yeah, I would be looking at that. And that's why a lot of usage of drugs and stuff like that it has increased. I think it has increased over time since the COVID. But again, it's not many social outing. You're on your own. Not many people. You used to visit people, you don't have much visitors or you don't have much family around. So you go back to what you would have stopped using, to go back to it and just use it to cope with the difficult time that you have. Also, I think financial at the moment is very hard. So it's hard. And when you have less of what you used to, then your anxiety go up and you rely on medications and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know.
And then that can compound the problem, and it goes around in a cycle, and it just keeps revolving. And that prevalence is there, forever evolving. Thank you for that input, Aim. Here, it's where it's crucial to have those preventative and intervention strategies, because the types and classes of drugs have been here for a long time. They're just getting more, there's certainly more of it in the community. I can't think of the word. They're more prevalent, more accessible in different ways. And that statistical data of drug use across the population groups is now identifying a much broader usage, and as Sedam says, the more potent, yes, that's the word, and more dangerous in the sense of the harm that people are happening, especially at some of these music festivals where young people have taken one tablet. And quite a few people in the past few years have done this, and a few people have died because of that. When they're at raves, nightclubs, and then there's also the risk of the spiking of drinks as well becoming more prevalent. And that's part of our society that makes it very unsafe for the population to be out and even socializing. So then withdrawing, you're compounding the issues here around anxiety and isolation. what are the consequences and the effect of drug substitution and replacement? Often people think that changing their use of drug for another is about going in recovery. Because when they think they're not addicted to a drug, but they have control over a situation and they're using something else to help them control, that will actually eventually lead to overdose or death often, because they've changed one substance for another and then created a different addiction on that. So often people also do what they call polydrug use. So that's more different types of drug use at one time, or one after the other, for the bigger hit, for the bigger impact. It could be about the environment you're in, so that recreational use, the challenges that are put out there to people who are challenged to increase the high that they're having, the dangers that are there in that. And when you're mixing, alcohol and illicit drugs as well, prescription medications, ecstasy with alcohol, cannabis with a stimulant such as like amphetamines, those reactions can be very dangerous for that person, and they're a danger to themselves and to those around them. Preventing our safety here, how are we keeping ourselves safe whilst being able to then support people who are doing that? That's certainly meaning to call services, supports straight away, especially medical. So if you're having to do reporting around the practices and uses that your participants are using, remember, as you're gathering information, it's about respecting that person, in that we're not going to make assumptions along the way. We don't know why they're there, why they're using. We don't know their story enough. The story might come out along the way, but what you can gather are the facts that they can tell you what's happening to them and where they've come from. There's your facts. There's your story start line. More things will come out over time. Make sure your notes are clear, that any worker will be able to pick up and see where you're at with this person. If they need to come in and support, what if you're away? They need to be able to know where you're at. Make sure you date and sign everything. Every time you've written notes, sign off. When somebody says, have you signed off? Make sure you do that. It is crucial legal practice here. It is crucial for you in the industry. It is crucial for that participant to have the correct information recorded, and it is crucial for the organisation. You take care, Adam. See you next week. We do not judge. And this is where leaving our assumptions to the side and being able to work alongside somebody, give them honest feedback here. What is the report saying? This is where the feedback comes from. And for you and the organisation, you determining the entry of that person into a support group. Are they eligible for that support group? Are there risk behaviours here that might exclude them? Is there a different service that might meet their needs? These things need to be assessed, because a clear and comprehensive assessment can determine where that person's help can start. And treatment often needs a good determined entry point for you to then have referrals and resources in place for that recovery journey. And that's going to be a long journey. But some people are not ready there, and their behaviours could be risk-taking and could be at harm to themselves and others. That might exclude them from service. So all these things are factors for us if we're working in that sector. Even if we're not working in the alcohol and other drug sector, and we're working with homelessness or domestic violence, or we're community development, there are people in our community who are affected by drug and alcohol. If we can understand the behaviours, not isolate them, get them support, give referrals, give them information for support, try and help them build up their networks of support. And that's crucial to understand these behaviours. If they want to be included in parts of different activities, and they've come into a service, into a community centre, wanting to be a part of something, but they're clearly, their behaviours are risky, and that can determine their acceptance or exclusion. Please try and think about having something else for them to be supported with. So this information from this module, not all about you working in the industry. It's about having the knowledge of how this can affect people that you could work with in all different areas of community and mental health. Having an understanding that we walk with openness, we're not judgmental, we're advocators. We're advocators, we don't overpower, we give time, we're flexible, and making sure that we can give resources, referrals. This is why we need to understand where our services are in our district. Have you got a bank of information of what referral services are in your area? These are all crucial parts of your practice here. And if you can't support somebody that's come into a service with alcohol and other drugs in your service, because it mightn't be focusing on that, know services that you can refer people to. Are they accessible? Are they going to be able to get there by public transport? How can you support that person in that moment? Are they safe to be with, or are they somebody that you need to get extra help for? Because if they're having a real psychosis moment, that's certainly an ambulance. If there's somebody who's lost, alone, isolated, how can your service help them? If not, where can you direct them to? It's about not leaving them with nothing, because your service doesn't cater for that. This information is to open up your scope and understanding of the struggles that people would have. So, what is our takeaway from tonight's information? What will you take away from tonight? Elizabeth, can I ask you that?
The takeaway today will be how to be very mindful of how you take care of your client that are going through issues like drugs and alcohol, and be very mindful how you address the situation if you want to help them.
Yeah. Thank you. Trudy, what will you take away?
I like what Mark said in the chat about our own unconscious bias, because they do come through to participants who, and also I think the other thing is not only to advocate for them, but actually look after yourself. Because if one thing I've learned since being at this company is these participants, actually, they kind of like look to you as a role model. And if you're not looking after yourself, you'll probably find they'll go downhill a little bit. Does that make sense? Because they're picking up on our cues, and if we're all stressed out, and our person, for example, personal hygiene, how can I tell someone to shower when I haven't showered for 10 days?
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
yeah,
But yes, it's
but I still
practice.
think one thing I've especially learnt the hard way is self-care in this industry is vital. And it's not sometimes all about the participant. Sometimes it's about looking after us first and being a bit selfish.
Well, it's not about selfishness at all, Trudy. It's about self-care. That's crucial for our work. It's a part of our duty of care to ourselves.
Like,
I'm
for
glad you
example,
brought that up. Yeah, I wouldn't see it as selfish.
no, and one thing, I've had a participant, I've still got her, and she used to eat her lunch in the car, right? And she didn't want to go to one of our simulated training houses, right? And I just said, well, I've got to eat. And I said, and if I don't eat, I can't support you properly, and I can't drive you back properly.
Yeah.
And that's how I got it round.
Yeah.
And now it's not a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just an example. And I just think, we can advocate for everybody else, but sometimes we've got to advocate for ourselves.
That's very true. A timely reminder that we're important in all of this. If we can't do our work properly, how are we supporting others then? Yeah, but our health is crucial to be able to do the great work that everybody's doing out there. And it's hard work,
Oh, yeah.
often very hard mentally and physically. And the judgment calls that you need to make around safety, directions of care, support, they're all crucial, but you need to be well enough and looking after yourself here too. Self-care is important. Your boundaries are important. Following regulations are important. They're all there for a reason. Thanks, Trudy. Anne, what will you take away from tonight?
I got few, but one of the main thing I would take away would be you're an example of the care, or you let me put it therapeutic kind of way. Your way of doing things is influence them to be good or be bad. So if you're physically or if you're not mentally at stable, it's best for you not to be with them, because you're reflecting what's going on in your life to them, and they would take it that way, and it's just like it's becoming very you're not supporting, they're not benefiting, and you're not providing the best service
Yeah.
you should be providing. So that's what.
Yes, because that's our duty of care, a risk of harm, that we also have to be careful that we are not harming the people we're working with.
Mm.
And that's part of our code of duty of care here. Our practices here, but our duty of care is to the participant and to ourselves. Thank you. Alex?
Yeah, I think that like if we're in like a service, an AOD service or something similar, you know, if a client approaches us with some AOD challenges, you know, it's a lot of the time there's a lot of other things going on as well, you know, and we need to look at the bigger picture. You know, we can't just focus on one thing or even what they just present with, you know, we need to like develop a bit more of an understanding of them and create a little bit more of a story or a picture.
Yeah. And those environmental factors here, it's not just about one area, is it? It's a lot of things to take into account of how that person's story became where it is right now. Thank you, Alex. Mark, I notice you've put into the chat, is that what you're taking away from tonight?
Not necessarily. I think I'm taking away from tonight a few things. I think for a start, self-care is not selfishness. Self-care is like you're almost giving too much of yourself. I think it's a fine line when you're trying to help people and possibly also trying to tell your own story. And it's a trap that I think most people can fall into from time to time. And the other thing I'm taking out from tonight is people get a vibe when you're being open and honest and treating them with respect. And sometimes they might not even be telling us the 100% truth, but we've got to accept that version for us to help them. And that's what we do. So, yeah, that's what I'm taking out.
And you're also talking there about the authentic self for us as workers, and to be able to take what we hear and validate that for the speaker, for the participant.
Yeah.
Things will evolve over time. If that's to come out and be different, it will come out, but then it will come out at their pace as well. Yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I'm just gonna duck outside, so I'm just gonna.
Okay, Anne. All right, you take care. All right, thank you, everybody. Heavy night, lots of work done tonight. Loved your having your reflections and your input. Thank you, because that's going to certainly help our other learners who are online as well. And your participation here certainly gives some more insight into the whole module that we've been working on with AOD. So please remember to reach out to Calendly if you want a session with a trainer for task support. And if you're having any technical issues, lso@haiderinstitute.edu.au. And you can email me with any questions as well at helen@haiderinstitute.edu.au. New subject next week. We're moving along. Okay, take care. Good night,
See you, Helen.
everyone.
Thank you.